Janet, the new girl's secret picture. This, a shy transfer student walking into her first day at a new school, clutching her schedule with trembling hands, while the popular girls circle like sharks smelling blood in the water. They see an easy target. Someone quiet, someone different, someone who won't fight back. What they don't realize is that those gentle hands have been forged into weapons of precision, and that soft-spoken demeanor masks years of disciplined training that could end their reign of terror in seconds. This is the story of Maya Rodriguez, and how one moment of courage changed everything at Riverside Academy forever. The bullies thought they were about to destroy another innocent soul, but they were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who choose not to show their strength. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Rodriguez pressed her back against the cold metal of Locker 247, watching the chaos of Riverside Academy swirl around her like a hurricane she couldn't escape. The hallways buzzed with the familiar sounds of high school life, sneakers squeaking against polished floors, locker doors slamming shut, and the overlapping conversations of students who belonged here, who had found their place in this complicated ecosystem. At 15, Maya had hoped that moving to Millbrook, Oregon, would give her family a fresh start. But 3 hours into her first day, she was already questioning everything. Her father's military transfer had brought them here from a small base town in Colorado, where everyone knew everyone, and fitting in had never been an issue. Here at Riverside Academy, with its sprawling campus and over 2,000 students, Maya felt like a grain of sand lost on an endless beach. She pulled her oversized grey hoodie tighter around her small frame, a habit she'd developed whenever she felt overwhelmed. The hoodie was her armor, her way of becoming invisible in a world that felt too big and too bright. Maya's dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, and she had the kind of naturally tan complexion that spoke to her mixed heritage, her mother's Mexican roots blended with her father's Irish background. She was pretty in an understated way, with large brown eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing nothing. Most people who met Maya saw a quiet, perhaps even timid girl who preferred art class to athletics and spent her lunch periods reading in the library rather than socializing in the courtyard. What they couldn't see, hidden beneath layers of carefully chosen baggy clothing and shy smiles, was the lean muscle that came from 8 years of dedicated training. What they couldn't know was that those delicate-looking hands could break boards with a single strike, or that her seemingly fragile frame could generate enough force to send a grown man sprawling. Maya Rodriguez was a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo, trained under Master Kim at the Golden Dragon Dojo back in Colorado, where she had spent countless hours perfecting forms, sparring with opponents twice her size, and learning that true strength came not from the ability to inflict damage, but from the wisdom to know when not to. Her parents had been supportive of her martial arts journey from the beginning. Her father, Staff Sergeant Roberto Rodriguez, understood the value of discipline and self-defense, especially for a daughter who would be moving frequently due to his military career. Her mother, Carmen, a registered nurse who had seen too many victims of violence in her emergency room shifts, wanted Maya to be able to protect herself in a world that wasn't always kind to young women. But both parents had been adamant about one thing: Maya's skills were for protection only, never for aggression or showing off. The morning had started badly when Maya's schedule was mixed up in the registrar's office, making her 20 minutes late to her first period chemistry class. Walking into a room full of strangers who had already formed their lab partnerships was like stepping into a spotlight she never wanted. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been kind but flustered, trying to find Maya a place to sit, while 28 pairs of eyes studied the newcomer with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment. Second period English hadn't been much better, Maya had been assigned to read a passage from Romeo and Juliet aloud, and her voice had caught on the words as she felt the weight of everyone's attention. A few students had snickered at her slight accent, the way she pronounced certain words with the faintest hint of her mother's Mexican inflection. It wasn't that Maya was ashamed of her heritage, quite the opposite. But being different in a new place always felt like wearing a sign that said outsider. Now, standing at her locker during the break between second and third periods, Maya was trying to gather the courage to navigate the rest of the day. She had pulled out her art supplies, a worn leather portfolio that had been her grandfather's, and a small wooden box containing her favorite pencils and charcoal sticks. Art was her sanctuary, the place where she could express herself without words, where being different was actually an advantage rather than a liability. As she organized her materials, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the small mirror attached to the inside of her locker door. She looked exactly like what she was trying to be: unremarkable, forgettable, safe. The oversized hoodie completely hid her athletic build, and her posture was deliberately slouched to minimize her height. She had learned to make herself small, to take up as little space as possible, to avoid drawing attention that might lead to conflict. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's the first day going, Mija? Remember, you're stronger than you think." Carmen Rodriguez always seemed to know exactly when her daughter needed encouragement, even from across town at Millbrook General Hospital, where she was working her first shift as the new trauma nurse. Maya smiled slightly and texted back, "It's fine, Mom. Love you too." But as Maya closed her locker and prepared to head to her third period art class, she had no idea that her carefully constructed invisibility was about to be shattered. She didn't notice the three girls who had been watching her from across the hallway, whispering among themselves and pointing in her direction. She couldn't have known that Jessica Walsh, Riverside Academy's self-appointed Queen Bee, had already decided that the new girl needed to be taught her place in the social hierarchy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya shouldered her art portfolio and started walking toward the East Wing, where the creative arts classrooms were located. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the familiar weight of her supplies and the rhythm of her footsteps against the polished floor. In her mind, she was already planning the drawing she wanted to work on, a landscape inspired by the Oregon mountains she had seen during the drive to Millbrook. Art was her escape, her way of processing the complexity of constant change and new beginnings. She was so focused on reaching the safety of the art room that she almost missed the deliberate obstacle that appeared in her path. Jessica Walsh stepped directly into Maya's walking route, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the fluorescent hallway lights like a crown. At 16, Jessica had perfected the art of looking effortlessly beautiful while maintaining an edge that warned others not to cross her. She wore her designer jeans and fitted sweater like armor, each piece carefully chosen to showcase her family's wealth and her own position at the top of Riverside Academy's complex social food chain. Jessica's green eyes held an calculating intelligence that she used to identify threats to her status and eliminate them before they could gain traction. Behind Jessica stood her two constant companions, Ashley Kim and Madison Torres, forming a triangle of intimidation that had been terrorizing Riverside's hallways for the better part of 2 years. Ashley, with her perfectly straight black hair and expensive makeup, served as Jessica's social media strategist and character assassin. She had an uncanny ability to spread rumors at the speed of light and destroy reputations with a few well-placed comments on social platforms. Madison, taller and more athletic than the other two, had earned her place in the group through her family's connections and her willingness to escalate situations when Jessica's psychological warfare needed physical backing. Maya stopped walking, clutching her art portfolio closer to her chest as she realized the three girls weren't going to move aside. The hallway around them continued to buzz with activity, but Maya could feel the subtle shift in energy that occurred. When predators selected their prey, other students seemed to sense the tension and began giving the small group a wider berth, their survival instincts warning them to avoid getting caught in whatever was about to unfold. "Excuse me," Maya said, quietly, her voice barely audible above the general noise of passing students. She tried to step around the trio, but Ashley smoothly moved to block her escape route while Madison closed off the other side. It was a practiced maneuver, executed with the precision of a military operation. Jessica tilted her head slightly, studying Maya with the kind of intense focus a scientist might use when examining an interesting specimen under a microscope. "You're the new girl, right? Maya something." Her tone was deceptively friendly, but Maya could hear the underlying current of challenge running beneath the words. "Maya Rodriguez," she answered, still hoping this was just an awkward introduction rather than something more sinister. Her training had taught her to assess threats quickly, and every instinct she possessed was telling her that these three girls represented danger, though not the kind she had been trained to handle. Physical confrontations had rules, honor codes, clear objectives. Social warfare was messier, more unpredictable, and often left deeper scars than any physical wound. "Rodriguez," Jessica repeated, drawing out the syllables with just enough emphasis to make Maya's heritage sound foreign and unwelcome. "That's interesting. Where exactly did you transfer from? Somewhere in Mexico?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "Colorado. My father is stationed at Peterson Air Force Base." She had learned that mentioning her father's military service sometimes earned her a measure of respect, or at least caused people to think twice before pushing too hard. Ashley laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, a military brat. That explains the whole." She gestured vaguely at Maya's appearance. "Thrift store aesthetic you've got going on." The comment hit harder than Maya expected. Her family wasn't poor, but military life meant frequent moves, practical choices and priorities that didn't always include keeping up with the latest fashion trends. Maya's clothing budget went toward art supplies and martial arts equipment, not designer labels. She had never felt ashamed of her choices before, but something about Ashley's dismissive tone made her question everything about her appearance. Madison stepped closer, using her height advantage to loom over Maya in a way that would appear casual to any passing teachers, but felt distinctly threatening. "You know, we've been watching you this morning. You seem lost, confused, like you don't really understand how things work around here." Maya's grip tightened on her portfolio. She could feel her pulse beginning to quicken, her body's natural fight-or-flight response activating even though no physical threat had been made. Master Kim had taught her that conflict came in many forms, and that the most dangerous opponents were often the ones who attacked your spirit rather than your body. "I'm just trying to get to class," Maya said, attempting to keep her voice calm and non-confrontational. "I don't want any trouble." Jessica's smile widened, but it never reached her eyes. "Oh, sweetie, we're not trouble. We're actually trying to help you. You see, Riverside Academy has certain expectations, standards that everyone needs to meet if they want to fit in and be accepted. Right now, you're not meeting those standards." "What kind of standards?" Maya asked, though she suspected she didn't want to hear the answer. Ashley pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly, her fingers flying across the screen with practiced efficiency. "Well, for starters, there's the obvious fashion disaster we're looking at. I mean, that hoodie is so oversized, it looks like you borrowed it from your dad. And don't even get me started on those shoes." Maya glanced down at her worn sneakers, the same ones she wore to martial arts practice. They were comfortable and Practical, broken in from years of training, but she suddenly saw them through Ashley's critical eyes and felt a stab of self-consciousness. Madison crossed her arms, flexing slightly in a way that emphasized her athletic build. Then there's the whole shy, artsy girl thing you've got going on. That might have worked wherever you came from, but here at Riverside, we value confidence, strength, people who know how to stand up for themselves and make their presence known. The irony of Madison's words wasn't lost on Maya. If only they knew just how capable she was of standing up for herself, or how much strength was hidden beneath her deliberately unassuming exterior. But revealing that truth would mean abandoning everything her parents had taught her about using her abilities responsibly. Jessica stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a tone that was somehow both sweet and venomous. Here's what's going to happen, Maya Rodriguez. You're going to understand that there's a hierarchy here, and right now, you're at the very bottom. You're going to learn to stay in your lane, keep your head down, and not draw attention to yourself, because if you don't... She let the threat hang in the air, unfinished, but perfectly clear. Maya felt something shift inside her, a small flame of anger beginning to burn through her carefully maintained composure. These girls didn't know anything about her family, about the challenges she had already overcome in her 15 years. They saw someone they could push around, someone they could use to reinforce their own sense of power and importance. But Maya also heard her mother's voice echoing in her memory. Choose your battles wisely, Mija. Not every fight is worth having, and not every opponent deserves your energy. So instead of responding with the defiance that was building in her chest, Maya simply nodded slightly and said, "I understand." Jessica seemed pleased with this response, apparently interpreting Maya's composure as submission. "Good, I'm glad we could have this little chat. Oh, and Maya, I'd be very careful about who you try to make friends with here. Some people." She glanced meaningfully at a quiet boy who was walking past with his head buried in a book. "It might give you the wrong idea about where you fit in our little ecosystem." With that, the three girls stepped aside, creating a path for Maya to continue toward her art class. But as she walked away, Maya could hear Ashley's voice behind. This is going to be so much fun." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she pushed open the door to the art room, grateful to finally escape the suffocating tension of the hallway encounter. The familiar smell of acrylic paint, charcoal dust, and turpentine welcomed her like an old friend, immediately beginning to calm her frayed nerves. The art room at Riverside Academy was larger than the one at her previous school, with tall windows that let in natural light and walls covered with student work from previous semesters. Easels were scattered throughout the space, some holding half-finished paintings, while others stood empty, waiting for new creations. Mr. Davies, the art teacher, looked up from his desk where he had been grading sketches. He was a man in his early 40s, with paint-stained fingers and the kind of gentle demeanor that made nervous students feel immediately at ease. His gray hair was slightly messy, as if he had been running his hands through it while concentrating, and his clothes bore the telltale marks of someone who worked with his hands for a living. "You must be Maya Rodriguez," he said with a warm smile. "Welcome to Advanced Art. I've heard good things about your portfolio from your previous school. They sent over some samples of your work, and I have to say, I'm impressed." Maya felt a genuine smile cross her face for the first time all day. "Thank you, Mr. Davies. I'm really excited to be here." It was true. Art class had always been her safe haven, the one place where being different was celebrated rather than criticized. "Excellent. We're starting a new unit on portraiture today, focusing on capturing emotion through facial expression and body language. I think you'll find it interesting, given your obvious talent for observational drawing." Mr. Davies gestured. toward an empty easel near the windows. "Why don't you set up over there? The light is excellent, and it's quiet enough that you can really focus." As Maya arranged her supplies at the designated easel, other students began filtering into the classroom. She kept her head down, not wanting to draw attention to herself after the encounter with Jessica and her friends. The last thing she needed was to discover that the art room wasn't as safe as she had hoped. To her relief, the other students in advanced art seemed different from the mainstream population she had encountered in the hallways. They were quieter, more focused, the kind of people who expressed themselves through creation rather than destruction. Maya recognized the type immediately. These were her people, the artists and dreamers who found beauty in unexpected places and weren't afraid to show the world through their own unique lens. As she was arranging her charcoal pencils by hardness, Maya became aware of someone sitting at the easel next to hers. She glanced over to see a boy, about her age, with short dark hair and intelligent eyes, behind wire-rimmed glasses. He was already sketching in a well-worn notebook, his hand moving with the confident strokes of someone who had been drawing for years. "I'm Sam Chen," he said quietly, not looking up from his work. "You're the new girl everyone's been talking about." Maya felt her stomach clench. What are they saying? Sam finally glanced up, and Maya was surprised to see kindness in his expression rather than judgment. "Nothing bad, really. Just that there's someone new, and that Jessica Walsh has already marked her territory." He paused in his sketching. "Fair warning, Jessica doesn't like it when new people don't immediately fall in line with her vision of how the school should operate." "I kind of figured that out already," Maya said dryly, thinking back to the hallway confrontation. Sam nodded knowingly. "She cornered you, didn't she? Classic Jessica. She probably gave you the whole speech about hierarchy and knowing your place." When Maya's expression confirmed his guess, Sam shook his head. "She did the same thing to me when I transferred here last year, except I made the mistake of not backing down immediately." "What happened?" "Let's just say that Jessica has a very creative approach to making people's lives miserable. She's smart enough not to do anything that teachers can easily catch, but she's ruthless when it comes to social warfare. She turned half the school against me before I even knew what was happening." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "How did you survive it?" Sam gestured around the art room. "I found my tribe. The people in this room, the theater kids, the band geeks, we all know what it's like to be on the outside. We look out for each other." He returned to his sketching, adding delicate shading to what appeared to be a portrait of an elderly woman. "The trick is not to give Jessica what she wants. She feeds on fear and submission. If you can find a way to stand up to her without giving her ammunition to use against you, she'll eventually move on to easier targets." Maya absorbed this information, filing it away for future reference. "Have you ever seen anyone successfully stand up to her?" "Once," Sam said, his voice dropping even lower. "Last year, there was this senior named David Park. He was on the wrestling team, really confident, didn't take crap from anyone. When Jessica tried her usual intimidation tactics on his younger sister, David confronted her directly in front of half the school." "What happened?" Sam's expression darkened. "Within a week, there were rumors that David was dealing drugs. Someone planted evidence in his locker, and he got expelled. His family had to move to a different district, and his sister finished her sophomore year through online school because she was too scared to come back." Maya felt her blood run cold. She destroyed his whole family. Jessica's father is a prominent lawyer in town, and her mother sits on the school board. They have connections everywhere, and they're not afraid to use them. Sam looked directly at Maya, his expression serious. I'm not trying to scare you, but I want you to understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just typical high school drama. Jessica Walsh is dangerous in ways that most people don't realize until it's too late. Before Maya could respond, Mr. Davies called the class to attention. All right, everyone, let's talk about today's project. As I mentioned, we're focusing on portraiture, but with a twist. I want you to create a portrait that reveals something hidden about your subject, an emotion they're trying to conceal, a strength they don't know they possess, or a vulnerability they're afraid to show. Maya found herself thinking about the assignment in terms of her own life. What would a portrait of her reveal? The scared new girl trying to blend in, or the skilled martial artist hiding in plain sight? The daughter missing her friends back in Colorado, or the young woman trying to find her place in a hostile new environment? As Mr. Davies continued his explanation of the technical aspects of the assignment, Maya's mind wandered to her training with Master Kim. The elderly Korean man had been more than just a martial arts instructor. He had been a philosopher, a mentor, and sometimes a surrogate grandfather. His lessons had extended far beyond physical techniques, encompassing mental discipline, emotional control, and ethical responsibility. A warrior's greatest weapon is not her fist or her foot, Master Kim had often said. It is her mind. A truly skilled fighter wins without fighting, conquers without violence, and protects without causing harm. Maya had always understood these concepts intellectually, but she was beginning to realize that her current situation at Riverside Academy might be the ultimate test of Master Kim's teachings. How could she apply the principles of Taekwondo to a conflict that couldn't be resolved with kicks and punches? How could she defend herself against an enemy who attacked with rumors and social manipulation rather than physical force? The answer, she was beginning to understand, lay not in hiding her strength, but in finding new ways to channel it. Master Kim had taught her that true martial arts was about more than fighting. It was about discipline, confidence, and the courage to stand up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against you. As Maya began sketching her first portrait, she found herself drawing Sam Chen. There was something about his quiet resilience that spoke to her, the way he had survived Jessica's attacks and found a community of people who accepted him for who he was. In her drawing, she tried to capture not just his physical features, but the strength she sensed beneath his gentle exterior. "That's really good," Sam said, glancing over at her work. "You've got a natural talent for seeing people's true selves." Maya smiled, feeling more confident than she had all day. "My mom always says that art is about truth, showing the world as it really is, not as we wish it were, or as others try to make us see it." Your mom sounds wise. She is. She's also tough as nails. She grew up in a rough neighborhood in East LA, put herself through nursing school while working 2 jobs, and now she's one of the best trauma nurses in whatever hospital she works at. Maya added some final details to Sam's portrait, bringing out the intelligence in his eyes. "She taught me that being strong isn't about being the loudest or the most aggressive. It's about knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone make you into something you're not." Sam was quiet for a moment, studying Maya's face as if trying to read something there. "You're not what you seem, are you?" Maya's hand paused in its sketching. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're sitting here, talking about truth and strength, and drawing portraits that show people's hidden depths. But you're also walking around school like you're trying to disappear. There's more to you than the shy new girl act." Maya felt a moment of panic. If Sam could see through her carefully constructed persona, how long would it be before Jessica and her friends figured out that she wasn't the easy target they thought she was? On the other hand, she found herself wanting to trust Sam. There was something genuine about him, something that reminded her of the friends she had left behind. In Colorado, Everyone has hidden depths, Maya said carefully. That's what makes portraiture interesting. Sam nodded, apparently accepting her non-answer. Well, whatever secrets you're hiding, I hope they help you deal with whatever Jessica has planned, because I guarantee you, she's not done with you yet. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Maya heard familiar laughter coming from the hallway outside the art room. Through the glass panel in the door, she could see Jessica Walsh walking past with her entourage, their heads bent together in animated conversation. Even from a distance, Maya could tell they were planning something, and she had a sinking feeling that she was going to be the target. The rest of art class passed peacefully, with Maya losing herself in the familiar rhythm of creating. For 45 minutes, she was able to forget about Jessica Walsh and social hierarchies and the weight of expectations. In the art room, surrounded by like-minded people and guided by a teacher who understood the value of creative expression, Maya felt like herself again. But as the class period drew to a close and students began cleaning up their workstations, Maya felt the familiar anxiety creeping back in. Soon, she would have to leave this sanctuary and venture back into the hostile territory of Riverside Academy's hallways. Soon, she would have to face whatever Jessica and her friends had been planning during their animated hallway conversation. The transition from art class to fourth period chemistry felt like stepping from a warm, comfortable home into a blizzard. Maya clutched her schedule and tried to navigate the crowded hallways without drawing attention to herself, but she quickly discovered that her earlier encounter with Jessica had made her more visible than she wanted to be. Students she had never met were staring at her with curious expressions, and she caught fragments of whispered conversations that made her stomach churn. "That's the new girl Jessica was talking about," she heard someone say as she passed a group of sophomore girls gathered around their lockers. "I heard she's from some military base in the middle of nowhere," another voice added. Ashley posted about it on her story. Apparently, she's never even been to a real school before. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment and frustration. Ashley's social media post was already spreading lies about her background, painting her as some kind of sheltered military brat who didn't understand how the real world worked. The truth was that Maya had attended plenty of real schools. Her father's military career had taken their family to bases all over the country, and she had learned to adapt to new environments more times than she could count. But facts didn't matter in the ecosystem Jessica Walsh had created. What mattered was the narrative she chose to construct. Chemistry class proved to be another challenge entirely. Maya arrived to find that lab partnerships had already been established weeks ago, leaving her as the odd person out. Mrs. Henderson, the chemistry teacher, was a stern woman in her 50s who clearly had little patience for disruptions to her carefully planned curriculum. She assigned Maya to work with Trevor Walsh, Jessica's younger brother, apparently unaware of the complicated family dynamics she was creating. Trevor Walsh was a pale, thin boy with the same green eyes as his sister, but none of her social confidence. He wore expensive clothes that hung awkwardly on his slight frame, and he had the nervous energy of someone who lived in constant fear of saying or doing the wrong thing. When Maya introduced herself and took the seat next to him at their assigned lab table, Trevor's eyes widened with something that looked like panic. "You're the new girl my sister was talking about," he said in a voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around the classroom, as if checking to see who might be listening to their conversation. "I guess I am," Maya replied, trying to keep her tone neutral. She didn't want to put Trevor in an awkward position, but she also wasn't going to apologize for existing. Trevor fidgeted with his pencil, clearly struggling with some internal conflict. "Look, I'm really sorry about whatever Jessica said to you. She gets intense sometimes when there are new people around. It's not personal, really. She's just protective of the way things work here." Maya studied Trevor's face, noting the careful way he chose his words and the genuine distress in his expression. It was clear that he was caught between loyalty to his sister and his own moral compass. She found herself feeling sorry for him. It couldn't be easy being related to someone like Jessica Walsh. "It's okay," Maya said gently. "I understand that everyone has their own way of dealing with change." Trevor looked surprised by her gracious response. "You're not what I expected," he admitted. "Based on what Jessica said, I thought you'd be different." "What did she say about me?" Trevor's face flushed red, and he looked down at his hands. "I'd rather not repeat it, but she has this theory that new students need to be educated about how things work at Riverside. She thinks it's better to establish boundaries early, rather than let people get the wrong ideas about where they fit in." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Jessica's education program sounded ominous, and she had a feeling that her morning encounter was just the beginning of something much more elaborate and cruel. Before she could respond, Mrs. Henderson called the class to order and began explaining the day's experiment on chemical reactions and pH levels. Maya tried to focus on the lesson, but she was acutely aware of Trevor's nervous energy beside her and the weight of curious stares from other students who had clearly heard about her confrontation with Jessica. As they began setting up their experiment, Trevor worked with the precise movements of someone who had been well trained in laboratory procedures. His hands didn't shake as he measured chemicals, and his calculations were quick and accurate. Maya realized that despite his obvious anxiety about social situations, Trevor was actually quite intelligent and competent when it came to academics. "You're really good at this," Maya observed as Trevor expertly adjusted the pH meter they were using to test their solutions. "Chemistry makes sense," Trevor replied, his voice gaining confidence as he talked about something he understood. "There are rules, formulas, predictable outcomes. Mix these chemicals in this ratio under these conditions, and you'll get this result every time. It's not like..." He trailed off, glancing around the classroom. "It's not like dealing with people," Maya finished for him. Trevor nodded gratefully. "Exactly, people are unpredictable. They say one thing and mean another, or they change the rules without warning. Chemistry is honest." Maya found herself warming to Trevor despite his family connection. There was something refreshing about his straightforward approach to the world, even if it was filtered through obvious anxiety about his sister's expectations. As they worked together on their experiment, Maya became aware of a commotion developing at the lab table across from theirs. Ashley Kim and Madison Torres had somehow ended up as partners, and they were making no effort to actually complete the assigned work. Instead, they were using their phones to orchestrate what appeared to be an elaborate social media campaign. "Did you see how many likes that post got already?" Ashley was saying, her voice carrying clearly across the small classroom. "I told you people would eat this up. Everyone loves a good takedown story." Madison giggled as she scrolled through her phone. "The comments are hilarious. Apparently half the school thinks she's some kind of alien who's never seen civilization before." Maya tried to ignore them and focus on her work, but it was impossible to miss the fact that they were talking about her. Ashley had apparently created an entire fictional narrative about Maya's background, painting her as a backward military brat who had never attended a real school and didn't understand basic social norms. Trevor noticed Maya's discomfort and leaned closer to her. "They're not worth listening to," he said quietly. "Ashley thinks everything is content for her stupid social media accounts. She's been trying to become some kind of influencer since middle school, but she doesn't have anything interesting to say, so she creates drama instead." "Does your sister know what Ashley is posting about me?" Trevor's expression darkened. "Jessica doesn't just know. She's probably the one who told Ashley to do it. That's how Jessica operates. She doesn't get her own hands dirty with the obvious stuff. She lets other people do the actual posting and spreading rumors while she maintains plausible deniability. Maya felt a surge of anger that she had to work hard to suppress. The systematic nature of Jessica's campaign was becoming clear. This wasn't just casual bullying, it was a coordinated attack designed to destroy Maya's reputation before she had a chance to establish herself at Riverside Academy. Mrs. Henderson chose that moment to walk over to Ashley and Madison's table. Ms. Kim, Ms. Torres, I don't see much progress on your experiment. Perhaps you could save the social media for after class. Ashley looked up with an innocent expression that Maya was beginning to recognize as a signature move among Jessica's circle. Sorry, Mrs. Henderson. We were just documenting our process for our science portfolios. Some of us take our education very seriously. The teacher looked skeptical but moved on to check other tables. As soon as Mrs. Henderson was out of earshot, Ashley resumed her phone activity with renewed energy. This is perfect, Ashley whispered to Madison. Now we can add disrupts class with inappropriate behavior to the list. Jessica is going to love this. Maya's hands clenched involuntarily around the beaker she was holding. Every instinct Master Kim had trained into her was screaming for action, for some way to defend herself against this attack. But what could she do? Challenge Ashley to a fight over social media posts? Demand that she delete the lies she was spreading? Any response would just give them more ammunition to use against her. Trevor seemed to sense her internal struggle. I know it's hard, he said quietly, but the best thing you can do is ignore them. Jessica's campaigns always burn out eventually, especially if the target doesn't give her the reaction she's looking for. How long does eventually usually take? Maya asked. Trevor's uncomfortable pause told her everything she needed to know. It depends on how interesting you are to her. Some people she gets bored with in a few weeks, others. He didn't finish the sentence, but Maya remembered Sam's story about David Park and his family being forced to leave town. As they completed their experiment and began cleaning up their lab station, Maya found herself thinking about her conversation with Sam Chen during art class. He had survived Jessica's attention by finding his tribe and not giving her what she wanted. But Maya was beginning to understand that her situation might be different. Sam was quiet and artistic, someone who could fade into the background once the initial novelty wore off. Maya, on the other hand, seemed to have triggered something deeper in Jessica's predatory instincts. The bell rang, signaling the end of chemistry class, and Maya gathered her books with a heavy heart. She had 3 more classes to get through before lunch, and she had a sinking feeling that each one was going to bring new challenges as Ashley's social media campaign gained momentum. As she prepared to leave the classroom, Trevor caught her arm gently. Maya, can I give you some advice? She nodded, grateful for any guidance from someone who understood the Walsh family dynamics. Don't try to fight Jessica directly, Trevor said urgently. She's too smart and she has too many resources, but also don't just roll over and let her destroy you. Find a way to show people who you really are without giving her ammunition to use against you. Jessica's power comes from controlling the narrative about people. If you can find a way to tell your own story, she loses that control. Maya looked at Trevor with new respect. Beneath his nervous exterior and family loyalty, he had a sharp understanding of social dynamics and a moral compass that clearly conflicted with his sister's methods. Thank you, Maya said sincerely. That's really good advice. Trevor glanced around to make sure no one was watching them have a friendly conversation. Just, maybe don't mention that I said anything. Jessica doesn't like it when I interfere with her projects. Maya nodded, understanding the difficult position Trevor was in. As she left the chemistry classroom and headed toward her next class, she found herself thinking about his words. How could she tell her own story without revealing the secrets that her parents had taught her to keep hidden? How could she show people who she really was while still maintaining the careful balance her martial arts training required? The answer came to Maya during lunch period, but not in the way she expected. She had planned to eat quietly in the library, avoiding the social minefield of the cafeteria entirely. But as she approached the library doors, she heard raised voices, coming from around the corner near the gymnasium entrance. Her training had taught her to be aware of her surroundings, and something about the tone of the voices made her pause and listen. "Give it back right now, or I'm telling Coach Martinez. What you did to my uniform last week," a young voice was saying, high-pitched with fear and anger. "Oh, you're going to tell on us? What are you, 5 years old?" This voice Maya recognized. It was Madison Torres, Jessica's enforcer. "Maybe if you weren't such a loser, people wouldn't mess with your stuff." Maya peered around the corner and saw a scene that made her blood boil. Madison and 2 other girls had cornered a small freshman near the gym entrance. The younger girl couldn't have been more than 14, with short red hair and freckles that stood out starkly against her pale, frightened face. She was reaching desperately for what appeared to be her lunch bag, which Madison was holding just out of reach while the other girls laughed. "Please, just give it back," the freshman pleaded. "My mom packed me something special today because I had a bad morning and I really need—" "Oh, did Mommy pack you something special?" One of Madison's companions mocked in a baby voice. "Maybe if you get on your knees and beg really nicely, we'll consider giving it back." Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a familiar sensation she recognized from her years of training. It was the moment Master Kim had taught her to identify, the point where observation transformed into action, where the choice between walking away and standing up became crystal clear. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about someone smaller and more vulnerable being tormented by people who should know better. Without fully conscious thought, Maya stepped around the corner. "Is there a problem here?" Madison turned, her expression shifting from cruel amusement to surprise and then to recognition. Well, look who decided to join the party. If it isn't the military brat who thinks she's too good for the rest of us. "I think you should give her lunch back," Maya said calmly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. She could feel her posture shifting subtly, her weight distributing evenly between her feet in a way that would allow for quick movement in any direction. Madison laughed, but there was an edge to it now. "And what exactly are you going to do? If I don't, run crying to Mommy and Daddy about how mean the popular girls are." The freshman looked between Maya and Madison with wide, frightened eyes. She clearly wanted to escape, but Madison's friends had positioned themselves to block the most obvious exit routes. Maya recognized the tactical positioning immediately. These girls had done this before, and they were good at trapping their victims. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Maya said, taking a step forward. Her movement was deliberate and controlled, carrying an unmistakable message that she was prepared to back up her words with action. "Give her the lunch back and walk away." Something in Maya's tone must have registered with Madison, because for the first time, the older girl looked uncertain. She glanced at her companions, clearly expecting backup, but they were staring at Maya with expressions of confusion and growing concern. "You know what your problem is," Madison said, trying to regain her momentum. "You think you're tough, but you're just another scared new girl trying to play hero. Let me show you what happens to people who don't mind their own business at Riverside Academy." Madison set the lunch bag down and stepped toward Maya with obvious, aggressive intent. Her friends moved to flank Maya from both sides, clearly expecting this to be a simple matter of 3 against 1. What they couldn't have known was that Maya had been training for exactly this type of multiple opponent scenario since she was 8 years old. Maya remained perfectly still until Madison was close enough to grab her hoodie. Then, moving with fluid precision that looked almost effortless, Maya sidestepped Madison's lunge and used the larger girl's own momentum to send her stumbling past and into the wall behind them. It happened so quickly that Madison's friends didn't even have time to react before their leader was picking herself up off the ground with a stunned expression. "What the hell was that?" Madison demanded, her voice cracking slightly. "That was me asking you nicely," Maya replied, her voice still calm but now carrying an undertone that made it clear she was done playing games. "The next time won't be as gentle." One of Madison's friends, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor, began backing away from the confrontation. "Madison, maybe we should just go. This isn't worth getting in trouble over a stupid lunch." But Madison's pride had been wounded, and Maya could see the dangerous glint in her eyes that indicated she was about to escalate rather than retreat. "You think you're some kind of fighter? Let me show you what a real athlete can do." Madison charged again, this time leading with a wild swing aimed at Maya's face. Maya ducked under the punch with minimal effort, caught Madison's extended arm, and used a simple wrist control technique to guide the larger girl into an off-balance position. With a gentle but firm application of pressure, Maya encouraged Madison to kneel on the ground, her arm twisted behind her back in a position that looked painful but was actually just uncomfortable enough to ensure compliance. "Let me go!" Madison yelled, struggling against Maya's hold and discovering that every movement just made her position more uncomfortable. "Are you going to leave this girl alone?" Maya asked quietly. "Get off me! This is assault! I'm calling the police!" Maya increased the pressure slightly, just enough to make her point. "I asked you a question. Are you going to leave her alone?" "Fine, yes, whatever, just let me go." Maya released Madison immediately, stepping back to give her room to stand. Up, the older girl scrambled to her feet, her face red with humiliation and anger. Her friends had retreated several more steps and were looking at Maya with expressions of fear and newfound respect. "This isn't over," Madison hissed, but there was no real conviction in her voice. She had just discovered that Maya was not the easy target she had appeared to be, and the shift in dynamic was clearly unsettling. "Actually, it is over," Maya said firmly. "You're going to walk away, you're going to leave this girl alone, and you're going to tell Jessica Walsh that if she wants to mess with me, she should do it herself instead of sending other people to do her dirty work." Madison opened her mouth to respond, but something in Maya's expression made her think better of it. She gestured to her friends, and the three of them retreated down the hallway, casting nervous glances back over their shoulders. As they went, Maya turned to the freshman, who was staring at her with an expression of pure amazement. "Are you okay?" "That was incredible," the younger girl whispered. "How did you do that? Are you like a secret agent or something?" Maya smiled and picked up the lunch bag, handing it back to its rightful owner. "I just don't like bullies." "What's your name?" "Sophie Martinez. I'm a freshman, obviously." Sophie clutched her lunch bag to her chest like a precious treasure. "Nobody's ever stood up for me like that before. Thank you so much." "You don't have to thank me, Sophie. Everyone deserves to eat their lunch in peace." As Maya started to walk away, Sophie called after her. "Wait, what's your name? I want to tell my friends about this." Maya paused, realizing that this moment was exactly what Trevor had been talking about. This was her chance to tell her own story, to show people who she really was, without compromising her parents' teachings about using her abilities responsibly. "Maya Rodriguez," she called back. "And Sophie, you don't need anyone to stand up for you. You're stronger than you think." As Maya walked toward the library, she could feel a change in the atmosphere around her. Students who had witnessed the confrontation were already talking excitedly among themselves, and she could see the story spreading in real time through glances, whispers, and rapidly typed text messages. By the end of the day, everyone at Riverside Academy would know that the quiet new girl was not quite what she seemed. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How's your first day going, Miha?" For the first time since arriving at Riverside Academy, Maya found herself smiling as she typed her response. "Better than expected, Mom. I think I'm going to like it here after all." Odd. As she settled into a quiet corner of the library with her lunch, Maya reflected on the morning's events. She had managed to stand up to Jessica Walsh's intimidation campaign without compromising her principles or revealing more about her background than necessary. She had protected someone who needed help and shown the school community that she was not going to be an easy target. Most importantly, she had found a way to honor both her parents' teachings and Master Kim's philosophy. She had used her strength to protect rather than to dominate, had resolved a conflict with minimal force, and had demonstrated that true power came from the courage to do what was right rather than what was easy. Maya suspected that Jessica Walsh would not take this development well, and that her troubles at Riverside Academy were far from over. But for the first time since walking through the school's front doors that morning, she felt like herself again. Not the scared new girl trying to disappear, but Maya Rodriguez, daughter of a soldier and a nurse, student of Master Kim, and someone who was finally ready to stop hiding who she really was. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.